Tēnā koutou te whānau o Auckland Unitarian. Tēnā koutou nā manahiri, no mai, haere mai ki tēnei whare karakia a te atua, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. We welcome you into this circle of community. Welcome into the space made sacred by Auckland Unitarians for 119 years. We welcome you from demands and delights of the daily round, from the dirty dishes and unwaxed floors, from unmowed grass and untrimmed bushes, from all incompletenesses and not yet startednesses, from the unholy and the unresolved. We invite you to attend to our vision of peace and justice, of cleanliness and health, of delight and devotion, of the lovely and the holy, of who we are and what we can do. We welcome the power of tradition and the exhilaration of newness, the wisdom of the ages and the knowing of the very young. We welcome beauty, eloquence, poetry, and music to be the bearers of our dreams. We welcome you to open your eyes, your ears, your minds, your hearts to the amplest dimensions of life, no matter what the risk. We especially welcome you if you are a visitor just passing through or seeking a spiritual home. We know that we are pleased and honored by your presence. You should also know our worship service is the prelude to morning tea. It is our sacrament of hospitality. Please join us. It won't be complete without you. It's been a hard week for this progressive Kiwi American. I still vote in America, and I had high hopes that maybe thanks to Trump, the country was ready to move in a new direction. I know votes are secret, but I'll confess that I voted for Elizabeth Warren in California. But as Stephen Colbert acknowledged, the results were a devastating blow for those of us who still believe in competence. As you may know, results did not go as hoped, and she dropped out of the race this week, just a few days before the UN's International Women's Day, which is today. In a field that once heralded 5 women candidates, Democrats now have a choice between 2 pale males, both older than Donald Trump. When she was asked if her candidacy was doomed by sexism, she responded that if a woman says yes, she is a whiner. And if she says no, a bazillion women ask what planet is she living on. Elizabeth took a risk running for all the little girls she exchanged pinky shares with, that someday it would be different for them. That then women running for office would be judged by the same standards applied to men. That someday there would be true equality between the genders. Sadly, in America, 2020 is not the year. And while we have a woman prime minister here, we can't be too smug. It is appalling how much misogyny she must endure. With these thoughts and feelings running through my head, it seemed that having a pale male septuagenarian talk about sexism today was not the right choice when I live with someone who is a leading advocate for gender equality both nationally and internationally. I'm pleased that Rachel has accepted the invitation to be our speaker this week. We light this chalice for our foremothers, the pioneers who created kitchens and homes out of wilderness and unfloundering determination, the artisans who invented soup and poultices from plants, herbs, and roots, the wise women who brought babies into the world of the living and held elders in the world of memory, the teachers, the preachers, and the wordsmiths who told the ancient stories behind desks, pulpits, podiums, and kitchen tables. May we honor these women who shared our faith and our convictions. Please join me in the words of our covenant in your order of service. Love is the doctrine of the church. The quest for truth is the sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony. Thus do we covenant with each other and with our God.
E ngā mana i ngā reo, e rau rangatira mā. Whare tuake nei tēnā koe, e te whānau Auckland Unitarian. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. The seeds of International Women's Day were sown the year my grandmother was born. In 1908, 15,000 women marched through New York City demanding shorter working hours, better pay, and the right to vote. It was the Socialist Party of America who declared the first US National Women's Day a year later. The idea to make the day international came in 1910 at an international socialist conference of working women in Copenhagen. An attendee called Clara Zetkin suggested it, and the 100 women present from 17 countries unanimously agreed. The first international celebration was in 1911 in Austria, Germany, Denmark, and Switzerland. The demands of the 15,000 in New York were radical. Women's Day marked a radical program. For women to have decent work, decent pay, and an equal voice, we needed a change at the roots of society. Socialist women declaring a day for women showed defiance of the master-servant relationship. 110 years later, what are we waiting for? Decent work, equal pay, and an equal voice. The master-servant relationship has deep roots. We don't often talk about the master-servant relationship nowadays, but it still exists. Unions are the only institutions that exist to challenge that unequal power relationship, and Unitarians can be allies in the challenge. Closer to home in Aotearoa, Kate Shepherd would not have declared herself a socialist, but what she had been demanding 20 years earlier was equally radical. Kate Shepherd and her comrades are best known for their hard-fought and successful demand for votes for women. We proudly declare our world-first status and remember that women first voted here in 1893. Votes for women are not a prize in themselves, but are a proxy for something else. They're a proxy for an equal place in society with men. Kate Shepherd and her comrades had a vision of what that equal place would look like. Kate Shepherd started the National Council of Women, the oldest women's organisation in the country. And the National Council of Women had another demand after the success of the campaign for votes: equal pay for women. What are we waiting for? 125 years later, we are waiting for the realisation of that part of Kate Shepherd's vision: equal pay for women. It is reasonably well known that Kate Shepherd was a founding member in this country of the Women's Christian Temperance Union, the WCTU. The WCTU preceded and motivated the campaign for votes for women. This factoid from history is known but less talked about. It's easy simply to regard the WCTU as a bunch of wowsers. I think the word wowser has changed over the years. I don't mean wowser as in wowee, I mean wowser as in killjoy. But the WCTU wasn't against alcohol because they were against joy. They identified alcohol as a source of poverty and violence. Men, often sole breadwinners, and if not, certainly paid far more than their wives, were drinking away the family income and coming home drunk and violent. The women of that organisation recognised that poverty and violence disproportionately affect women, and many of them would have had the bruises and the rickets to prove it. They identified women's suffrage as a tool to lift women out of poverty and to free us from violence. What are we waiting for? We are waiting for the realisation of that part of Kate Shepherd's vision, a world free from violence and poverty. Radical stuff. The subtitle of this talk is The Pitfalls of Respectability. In 1975, International Women's Day became a day recognised for the first time by the United Nations. That year was International Women's Year, riding the crest of second-wave feminism in the West. That year was also the year of the first United Women's Convention in this country. And the United Nations held a big conference in Mexico City and another in Copenhagen in 1980 and another in Nairobi in 1985. Then in 1995, 25 years ago, at the United Nations Fourth World Conference on Women in Beijing, the nations of the world produced the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. The concerns of the socialist women of the late 19th and early 20th centuries had gone mainstream. The United Nations governments would now put resources into realising a world with decent work, equal pay, and an equal voice for women. A world where women were free from poverty and from violence. This would entail attention to women's economic situation, our health, our education, to our experience of violence, to our portrayal in the media, to the experience of girls, to our human rights. Women's equality had gone mainstream. Every year since Beijing, the UN member states, non-governmental organisations, and some trade union participants have met to monitor the progress of the Platform for Action. This year is Beijing plus 25. As an aside, the gathering in New York, which was due to take place over the next fortnight, has been suspended because of COVID-19. And yet, what are we waiting for? We are waiting for decent work, for equal pay, and for an equal voice. We are waiting to be free from violence and poverty. How can that be with all those resources? The pitfalls of respectability. In the 1990s, Kate Shepherd appeared on the New Zealand $10 note. And in 1999, in time for the new millennium, she replaced the Queen on the front. You can't get much more mainstream or respectable than that. So what's wrong with being respectable? When you look up the history of our $10 note in Te Ara, the Encyclopedia of New Zealand, it tells of our pride, as I mentioned, at being the first country to grant women the vote. What's wrong with that? Women were not granted the right to vote by this country. Women fought for the right to vote in this country. 1 in 3 adult women signed the petition to achieve that. Women and their male allies campaigned for years for the right to vote as a means to end poverty and violence. When the respectable mainstream tells the story, it becomes a respectable story of the powerful granting something to the weak. The challenge to the master-servant relationship disappears from history. The main angle we see in the mainstream on International Women's Day is that it is a celebration of the achievements of women. I don't condemn that. I don't want always to be bleak. It is good to feel joy and take pleasure in wonder, beauty, and achievement. However, as it has been said, a woman's work is never done. Or, as Clay said last week, this is not a once and for all task. The world must be civilised again and again with each new generation. So while we celebrate, let's not allow the stories to be sanitised, the histories to be erased, the project to be framed by the powerful who might feel magnanimous enough to redistribute some of the resources. Let's not fail to understand the problem of the master-servant relationship. Last time I spoke in this pulpit, I said we need a radical recalibration of what it is to be human. I was talking about all people having equal value, truly equal value, not the weak having value bestowed by the powerful, not the servant having value bestowed by the master. I spoke about the equal pay case that recognised that women's traditional care work, skilled, responsible, difficult work, had been undervalued because it was mostly done by women. The recognition was momentous. The solution was impressive, but temporary. A $2 billion settlement to increase the pay of 55,000 people. We certainly celebrate that and feel joy and wonder and a sense of achievement. But a woman's work is never done, and that settlement gave no guarantee beyond the year 2021 that pay in the care sector will continue to rise. We have done some other work, though, in this area. The PSA, the Public Service Association, had raised a claim against the State Services Commission before the equal pay case, claiming the eradication of systematic, embedded, unequal pay. I worked with the PSA, other state unions in health and education, and with the State Services Commission and other state agencies to negotiate 5 gender pay principles. These principles are a guide to the ongoing work of increasing women's pay to the level of men's and keeping it there. These principles address all the things that contribute to women being paid less than men, including the traditional undervaluing of women's skills. The principles contribute to recalibrating what it is to be human. Principle 1, freedom from bias and discrimination. Because the bias of the powerful and their discrimination against women contributes to women being paid less than men. Principle 2, transparency and accessibility. Because secrecy in pay scales and hidden decisions about pay rates have a direct contribution, in combination with discrimination and bias, to women being paid less than men. Principle 3, the relationship between paid and unpaid work. Because women do vastly more unpaid work than men do. Not in my house, but in general. And that work currently has no economic value. When women take time out from paid work, they are valued less when they return. Principle 4, sustainability. Because this work is not a once and for all task. The world must be civilised again and again with each generation. Principle 5, engagement. And I call this the union principle because unless the people doing the work are involved in designing their pay systems and negotiating their rates, the system will always deliver more of what the master wants and less of what the servant needs. When these principles are implemented, they provide a method for eradicating and keeping eradicated the pay imbalance between men and women. This will also take money. The world's billionaires, fewer than 2,500 people, own more wealth than 60% of the world's population, 4.2 billion. So there is money, and I am confident that the billionaires don't need it all. So we have a tool for addressing women's poverty, for achieving decent work and equal pay. We need others too, but this is one. We also need a tool to address gender-based violence. Last year, the International Labour Organisation passed the Violence and Harassment Convention 2019, number 190. The convention is the first international instrument to recognise the right of everyone to a world of work free from violence and harassment. It is comprehensive and leaves no one behind. It recognises that people are at different levels of vulnerability, that one size does not fit all people. It recognises that migrant workers, Indigenous workers, disabled workers, queer workers, older workers, young workers, and women workers are particularly vulnerable to violence and harassment in the world of work. It recognises that the world of work extends beyond the workplace and that our home lives are not hermetically sealed from our work lives. It recognises that all parties, governments, employers, and unions have pieces of the answer, and all can act to eliminate violence and harassment. Crucially, the Convention has a single definition of violence and harassment. Harassment is not sealed off as being something lesser. It recognises that violence and harassment are on a continuum. They are a range of behaviours and practices. Harassment counts too. Harassment is part of a culture of violence as people who harass silence and weaken their victims. Convention 190 combines three different approaches: a human rights approach, a health and safety approach, and a feminist approach. It does away with the argument, which is a massive waste of time, about whether violence and harassment are a health and safety issue or a human rights issue. It brings together three strands into a powerful convention that offers practical, tripartite ways to prevent, address, and eliminate violence and harassment in the world of work. This convention is an international law. Countries are beginning to ratify it. Uruguay was the first in January this year. New Zealand has no current plans to do so. So what are we waiting for? We're waiting for a world of decent work, equal pay, and an equal voice. And we have some tools. We can read the gender pay principles on the Ministry for Women's website and think about who in our lives might need to use them. We can urge our government to ratify Convention 190. We can't do everything at once, but we can do these two things. We can be allies in the challenge to unequal power relationships. If not us, then who? If not now, then when? Kia ora tātou.
After this meditation by the Reverend Meg Riley, she entitles it Fighting with Siri. I got in a fight with Siri yesterday. I don't mean our typical exchange where I ask Siri what seems like a simple question like, how many teaspoons in a cup? And Siri responds with information about weather in Topeka. Or the phase of the moon, and then I repeat my request slower and with more precise enunciation, and Siri tells me something even more irrelevant, and then I throw some swear words at Siri and call up my search engine and look up what I need myself on the internet. This whole exchange made me realize how very, very angry I am about this tax bill, about $1 trillion being given to billionaires and corporations and then repaid with the lives of vulnerable people. If I weren't a minister, I would throw 10 F-bombs right here. I am angry, and it's holy anger. As feminist ethicist Beverly Harrison wrote, anger is not the opposite of love. It is better understood as a feeling signal that all is not well in our relations to other persons or groups or to the world around us. Anger is a mode of connection to others, and it is always a vivid form of caring. Where anger rises, there the energy to act is present. I say this as a cautionary tale in case you are angry too. Siri can handle it. I'm not worried about Siri, but other relationships with people with flesh and bones are much more fragile. I need to use the energy of my anger to act, and not to stay in the same conversations with the same people, picking on each other about tiny differences. I need to share this vivid form of caring with the people who are actually hurting me and attacking the people I love. I need to stay connected to as many people as possible so that our power is greatest when we use it. Use our anger to act. For your moment of meditation, how angry are you? Please join me in the words for extinguishing our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the flame. The roar of fire. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. For my closing words, may I overcome my fear of the unknown and have the courage to take risks. May I resist the complacency of comfort and have the strength to take risks. May I accept my failed attempts to improve and take the risk of trying again. May I acknowledge my privilege and take the risk of dismantling injustice. May I disentangle myself when my efforts are rejected and find the grace and insight to take new risks. May I learn from the mistakes I make and the pain I cause and find the endless hope to take more risks.